But wherever the person reaches maturity and older years, he must go into a strong, friendly relationship with the body. He must make that body work as well as it can and as long as possible. And if the person continues to be willful and do only what he wants to do and ignores the body, he will be in trouble. Of course, he may lean back upon medical help or feel that if he dissipates mildly, he can get over it. But every amount of this loss of energy and loss of purpose has its very heavy price that we have to pay for it. The Greek and the Egyptian and Roman mysteries were, I suppose, the most perfect forms of education that we have ever known. They were the only systems that educated the total person. That they educated not only the mind, but the body. They educated the emotions, the hopes, the ideals. They educated the individual socially to his responsibilities to those around him. Education made the person as nearly complete as his own basic character could permit. And where it was incomplete, there was a recognition of this and a corresponding humility. The individual did not try to bluff his way through his own imperfections. The Greeks, therefore, followed the old methods of discipline. They required those who wished to become wise to prepare the body for wisdom. They not only had to prepare the mind by training it in mathematics, astronomy, and music, but they had to also have enough understanding and insight of the relation of the body to the person to make sure that nothing necessary was neglected. Various philosophers back in those days had different attitudes about what the body really was. Most, however, agreed definitely that the body was a divinely bestowed instrument, that it was given to us in order that we might work with nature, that the human body is man's link with the natural world. It is his link with the world of the farms and the forests. It also gave him the contact with other human beings, providing him with the sensory perceptions useful and necessary to the cultivation of the mental and spiritual life. So the body was man's link with externals, with environment, with the things around him. Actually, this was very important, because if it had not been important, it is no doubt obvious that we would not have received the body. The body is something we have because we need it, because we have to use it, and because there is a right and a wrong way of using it, and the right way is good and the wrong way is evil. These are very simple conclusions the ancients worked with. They gradually purified the life of the person. They gradually redeemed all eccentric or irrational procedure. It was determined very definitely that no matter how great an intellectual you might be, if you are selfish, you can never be wise until you first of all overcome the selfishness. Between the individual and the divine light which he seeks, we'll find all of the qualifying mistakes which he continues to maintain, practice, and very often nurse with great ardor and affection. The person who has false ideas blocks the true ones. According again to these same people, 3 great books have been given to us. One, of course, is Scripture, the great sacred writings of the world. One is nature, by means of which we can study all of the operations of the divine will. And the third is man himself, through the understanding and interpretation of which he gains the skill and courage to develop his own internal resources. The key to man's correction of his own faults lies in his operations in nature. he becomes more and more aware of the way the world works, and gradually he comes to realize that he is part of that world and that his body is subject to the laws of the earth, and that he must obey them. But the earth itself is subject to the rules and laws of heaven. But there is no conflict between heaven and earth. The conflict is between man and his own ambitions. And when we realize this, we can begin to build a closer relationship. Another point that is interesting, I think, is to realize that the body is the carrier of a certain type of memory. Within the body is a record of previous bodies, what they did, how they functioned, and how they were disciplined and trained. A good example of discipline with the body is music. A musician, especially a vocalist or an instrumentalist for that matter, must control the body. The musician must practice regularly, must dedicate his life to maintaining the peak of his own capacity and ability. He must never neglect, never overlook, never to be too busy to protect the talent which he has gradually developed. He must become, in a sense, a slave of a talent. Now, we don't all want to take on this degree of servitude, but we must all of us become servants of any talent or ability which we seek to perfect. We have to be able to exercise our control over disposition, which is, of course, partly physical and partly the reaction of the mind upon the physical, and then the physical reacting back again upon the mind. This type of interrelationship we find every day. So if we want really to get the accomplishments we need, we have to realize that the Zen man is right in one thing. The light of heaven shines upon the peaceful person. Peace within the self is the secret of man's conscious relationship with space. Space in a mysterious way is silent. Nearly all of the great voices that speak to man are not audible. They are voices that speak in thoughts, in dreams, in hopes, aspirations, and in the strange experiences of mysticism. But everything that happens is a definite challenge. We have to learn to accept in silence that which is necessary for us to know. Silence for the body is harmony. Silence for the body is the fact that there is nothing indigestible going into the system. Silence for the body is good elimination. Silence for the body is proper relaxation and rest. It is free from all poison and toxins which destroy the body, because a poisoned coma is not the silence of the wise. So once we have the body quieted down, so it is not constantly demanding something, or expecting something, or suspicious that we are demanding something, then we can be quiet. We can sit with a good book and enjoy it. We can walk back for a little while in nature and be refreshed. We can look at a great work of art, and our spirits are inspired and comforted. Silence inside of ourselves means free from forced meaning, from interruption, or from conflict, from prejudice relating to these kind of things. Having gained a physical silence, and having learned to love a certain silence, we can then decide what we want to put into it. Having cleaned the inside of the cup of everything that is not important, we can then take this silence and refurnish it. It would be like getting rid of a lot of old broken down furniture in a house. If we want to get rid of the furniture that we do not want or do not need, then we can settle down and refurnish. Once we have cleared the mind of trash and trivia, we can then settle down to refurnishing our mental home. We can decide what we need, what is going to be truly comfortable, and we can allow to come into that silence that which enriches it, but do not allow to come in that which disturbs it. After we begin this process, we also discover something else. We are nearly always disturbed by things that we refuse or reject. We are disturbed by conditions which we have not digested, which we have not analyzed, which we have not controlled. Therefore, if we achieve silence within ourselves truly, we will find that the interruptions become progressively fewer. And what disturbed us desperately last week will not bother us at all if our own inner silence is stronger. Now, silence is not to neglect. Silence is not a vacuum. It is a peace. It is quietude. It is the strongest situation possible, whereas simply turning off the mind can be a very negative and useless thing. We cannot block out thought, but we can ennoble it by ennobling the function that gives it to us. So then we begin to bring back into our silence the things that make us happy. We begin to listen to great music. We learn to appreciate great artistry. And we also learn all kinds of little things inside of ourselves that we can do. We can develop talents that we sense but have not yet evolved. Out of the silence we build a new life based upon peace, upon inner contentment, and upon a constant process of enrichment, the enriching of values. And little by little we put a nice new set of furnishings in the house. But these furnishings are proper. They are not gathered for ulterior motives. We're not refurnishing the house because we want to keep up with the Joneses. We are not furnishing it because we want more expensive things than our neighbors. We are not even furnishing it because we have no longer any interest in old things. In the peaceful heart there is neither old nor new, but there is a gradual increase of the sense of value, that which is most proper, that which is most complete to the inner life. That is the thing we shall try to acquire if possible. So we can develop a few little hobbies that help. We can enjoy good books and good friends. We can also gradually find the need for variety in our inner life. We find that if we pray all the time, we will not become virtuous, we will become sick. We also realize that if we go out trying to help people when we don't know what we are doing ourselves, that a certain frustration is going to result. We all have to work out these problems of making our silence the basis of a new career. And if it is built upon this quietude within ourselves, it has no enemies. It has lost the power to have enemies and do that type of thing. There's a story about Diogenes, who liked to live in a tub in the Athenian Forum and used to speak to his associates while standing near a wall that led up to another level. One day, a soldier listening to him disagreed with him, so leaned over the wall and spat at him. Diogenes looked up and then he turned to his friend. He said, "You know, I think I should be angry at that man, but I've forgotten how." Now, it's going to be a long time before most of us nowadays are going to forget how to be angry, or how to be revengeful, or how to work a nice and gentle insult at the proper moment. But there comes this inner peace that says this is no good. We are wasting energy that we can't afford to lose. Now we have energy in short supply all over the world. our energy resources are being depleted. About the only energy resources that are as yet available to most of us are our own energy. The energy to use the life in ourselves for the greatest good to all concerned. So to do this, we can't waste any of it. We can't waste any time in trivia. We can't waste much time in small talk or in useless activities. We can't spend too much time working along with social situations that have no future and very little past. It becomes a matter of building a rich life by varying it, but always by doing things that are basically important and significant. And after we get a fair degree of control over our own attitudes, so that we can really sit down and ask ourselves a very pertinent question, for instance, for people in our field of thought. Why do I want to be spiritual? Why do I want to be enlightened? And there'll be all kinds of answers, some of which you'll block before you even shape them, because you will realize they're not the best. But the question is always, why do we want to be better than we are? One answer to that, of course, is it is our destiny. We were created to become better every day. We were created to outgrow our own past constantly. Another thing that we can say is that the more we learn, the more we know, the more we understand, the more useful we can be, the more we can really be helpful, because there is very little true helpfulness in passing along our own personal undigested opinions. Most people are suffering from that type of opinionism which Epictetus calls a falling sickness of the reason. And why give advice to another which has never worked for ourselves? So we want to know more. We want to be better. We want this dynamo, this battery that we've got between the rib cages. We want this to support a project. We want this life energy to be used, not wasted or abused or thrown away. We don't wish to pass out of life at the end of the present embodiment full of energy we've done nothing with. We want to use it. And we want to use it primarily for the common good. One of the most dangerous thoughts that we can have is that we want to get better in order that we may be better than somebody else. That is a very sad mistake. The idea of growing so that we can become sort of spiritual aristocrats is a complete loss, and the stomach won't stand for it either. Every part of us will rebel against a false motive. Therefore, false motives will kill you just as quick as bacteria and germs. We have to grow because it is our duty. We have to be better because it is our divine right. And we have to accomplish everything possible for the unfoldment of ourselves in order that we can be of the greatest service to all. The individual who gains without desiring to serve is wasting time. Now, it's an interesting thing to contemplate sometimes the two persons performing exactly the same action. In one, it may be a commitment to good, and in another, it may be no commitment to anything. It is not the action. It is the motive. It is the reason within yourself why you do a certain thing that determines whether that action is good or bad. Therefore, it is very important for the individual to have motives above reproach, that the good deed can really be good all the way down to the core, and not simply a gesture on the surface with no substance in reality behind it. If we, therefore, are generous to other people, why? Are we trying to buy them? Do we expect that if we are generous to them, they will be generous to us? Or are we generous because we want to show off that we are rich enough to be generous? Is it a gesture of aristocracy? If we are generous, is it because we are informed by our religion that generosity is a virtue that must be practiced. All of these are the false motives, really. Even the idea of a religious generosity is not right, unless there is something very deep in the religious part of ourselves behind it. The reason for generosity is someone needs, and we have the privilege of sharing. Generosity is something that comes from the heart, without expectation of reward, without any prominent action. Secret giving was the secret of the old way of doing it. No one wanted applause, no one wanted recognition. In fact, St. Nicholas, who is the hero of this season, was the original saint of secret giving. He used to, according to the stories, he used to drive by on a donkey at night and toss coins in windows, so that in the morning the people whom he knew to need them, the money, would find it, but he would never let them know who gave it. He even went so far as to sell or mortgage or pawn the vessels on the altar of his church in order to feed the needy. That's the best use, probably, that was ever made of those utensils. There's one story, kind of cute, probably apocryphal, that one night when he was threw some coins in a window, one of the coins fell in the child's stocking. And from that time on, we had the habit of placing the stocking up for Christmas. But St. Nicholas represented the secret giver, the charity that came directly from the heart without any thought of reward. Probably a friend of mine who always liked certain things and never really knew why he liked them, he once told me when I asked him why something pleased him, he says, "It pleases me. That's why I do it. I do it because it pleases me." Well, what he did was very generous and very thoughtful, and it indicated that the right kind of things were the things that pleased him. So it is simply because we have a feeling about things and we want to do something about them. But the idea of ulterior motive sneaking in is wrong, because this ulterior motive somehow inside of our own conscience we estimate it. This motivation, this ulterior motivation, finally is interpreted in terms of blood cells, allergies, and all kinds of things of this kind. And the ulterior motive goes right into the physical body to give it more trouble. We have to be honest to the body if we expect the body to protect us through the long years of life. So honesty is the proper relationship. Now, as we go along a little further with this type of thing, we say, what comes next? Well, the individual wishes to study some line of thought, some belief, some teaching that is going to help them to have a better life. This is perfectly commendable. But now comes the problem of censoring the teaching. There are all kinds of things you can believe in this world, but so many of these beliefs are just a little dubious. And when you start studying, you have to think a little bit to find out why the person from whom you are getting the lessons is doing what they're doing. Is the person that is teaching you unselfish? Are they there merely to help you? Or are they really there either to enrich themselves or gratify their own ambitions? Most people who are a little frustrated in other matters find a religious allegiance a means of self-gratification. It is their one possible way of becoming conspicuous in something. And this is the wrong motive. And this wrong motive comes out along with many others in the health problems. And we know that the various biochemical remedies and so forth all have moral overtones. We will sometimes be able to computerize our emotions. We're going to realize that there's a great chemistry there, a chemistry which we've never investigated, but that there is a reason behind every emotion that we have and every thought that we have. And unless that reason is founded in peace, in the quietude of an inner life that has no ulterior motives, unless it is founded in that, the future of the student is in danger. There's one thing, of course, that has saved a great many people, and we can't afford to overlook it. Some of the best people I know have become better by following teachings that were not good. Now, it's hard to understand how this can happen, but one thing is true, beyond doubt, that if the person is basically sincere, you cannot destroy a completely sincere person. They will take a message, no matter how poor it may be, and transmute it by their own sincerity. They will find better meanings for things, and these meanings are better than the original meanings that were in the lesson. The sincere person is protected against corruption by the fact that they are inwardly honest. And as W.C. Fields is reported to have said on another occasion, you can't cheat an honest man. The reason why you can cheat people is because there's a little larceny in them already. They are looking for something for nothing. They are bargain seeking. They are trying to escape some infirmity or restriction without overcoming or changing themselves. They are not doing it the right way. So once you finally get to the point where you want outside help, then it is very necessary for you to have this quietude within yourself. The quietude that protects the body, protects the mind, the heart, and opens the way to the soul in a wonderful and clear manner. As you go further along, of course, it gets a little more complicated. If a very immature person makes certain mistakes, motive being uncertain, abilities being inconclusive, apparently the Lord is rather patient with them. It is the person who finally, having known better, makes a bad break, who goes against his own convictions for some ulterior motive. That one is in trouble. Therefore, it is true that the more advanced we become in the search for truth, the more we become the servants of that truth. And anything in which we appear to disobey that truth must cause us pause and consideration immediately. The higher we go in our insight, the more desperate our condition becomes if we betray the truths that we claim to love. So everything depends on these right motives. Now, if the right motives come along, and the person follows them reasonably well, and does what is approximately proper, I think that he will find that he will have a good allotment of years. All this peace in his soul is going to result in normal functions. The person's body will not be bothered or eclipsed by pressures or tensions. Food that might even be a little difficult can be digested if the mind is at rest, and the body can give the full tendency of digestion to the process. But if at the time we eat something that is indigestible, we also have a feud with someone, or we try to get out of it by a definite medication that itself is dangerous, then we are compounding the felony. If we are right on all these things, and we behave ourselves very well, there's no reason why our lives should not be a fully experienced period. Karma that we have brought forward has to be met. But in spite of that, we will have a good life. And we will also be planning for a still better one. We will have much better health, and we will find that by inward light, inward peace, inward quiet, we can actually overcome a number of dangerous external situations. We are worried about smog. We are worried about water pollution. We are worried about all these things. But if the person inside himself is actually at quietude and peace, and dedicated to the earnest carrying on of useful labors, it would be amazing how much pollution we can stand and survive it. Whereas if we are constantly aware of nothing but the pollution and make no effort to transcend the weaknesses in ourselves, the pollution is much more difficult to work with. The right attitudes in these things must be cultivated, and they all come from quietude. The moment noise gets in, trouble starts. And noise inside of ourselves is the most difficult of all to silence. So we go along and we use the body as a kind of barometer. The body tells us, in a sense, the direct and immediate consequences of what we think, what we feel, and what we do. The body tells us when we are extravagant and waste, because then there is privation. The body tells us when we don't rest properly, or that we are too much involved in some preoccupation. The body warns us of all kinds of improprieties of conduct, of nutrition, and exercise. The body is there to help us to keep the rules. And the body is so obvious to us that it's much easier, in a sense, to work with that level of pattern than it is with the mental and emotional levels themselves. There's also something so final about the body in these things. We always think we can bribe the emotions so that we can bluff the mental attitudes. But when we get a stomach ulcer, we know we've got it. And we know it's going to stay there until we do something about it. And if we neglect it long enough, it will destroy us. So we are in the presence of law operating not maliciously, not viciously, but inevitably. In the body we can see the consequences of all types of indiscretion coming home to roost. We can see them moving in on us. And we can realize that 4 or 5 years of bad habits will make a very serious inroad into our future usefulness. And as most people are looking more or less towards some type of utopia, they want to look forward to retiring to that little place in the country. They want to do the things they've always felt they would like to do. And they want to have a fair reward for what they did in their work and labor. So we can put it this way if we want to. We can say, why did they work and how did they work? Did they work because, primarily, they knew they needed work? Or did they simply work in order to get later a pension and be able to do these things they wanted to do? Now, if their work was sincere and they did a good day's work and they earned their wages properly, then the chances are the body, the mind, and the emotions will be supporting. But the individual who had never really cared for his job, took all he could get and give as little for it, when his time comes to retire and go on vacation, he very often can't do it. His health is so bad he can't do anything. Or he is so disillusioned and tired and fatigued he doesn't want to anymore. So the motive behind the job also has something to do with the overtones of reward you get later. The motives behind the job of irritation and constant dissatisfaction affected the body, unfortunately. And out of this, in turn, came a limitation of the retirement period. There are many people who retire, and they are so tired, worried, worn out, and disillusioned that they don't want to do anything. No human being in this world has to be disillusioned. They disillusion themselves. They are disillusioned when they expect the impossible. They are disillusioned when they don't get what they have not earned. They are disillusioned by the world around them. But the answer to it all lies in an attitude within themselves. Now, sometimes this attitude is due to the kidneys or the liver cutting up, but more apt in most cases, the attitude comes first. And after you hold it long enough, the liver and the kidneys will react, and you'll have permanent disabilities. So the person has to have peace within himself or live with disabilities. If he has to live with disabilities, he must live with them as graciously as possible, always realizing that every act that he performs, every decision that he makes, is part of the great plan of growth. And out of all these little efforts and the bigger efforts and the mistakes and the things done well, the human being is evolving toward the divine fullness of himself, which is the goal of all existence. Deity as the great educator, the great enlightener, the great perfecter of all things, has set up the plan that cannot fail, because in time, regardless of our mistakes, we are going to learn to do it right. The only difficulty is that we wait so long in some cases. Why shouldn't we start in by doing it right? Well, perhaps in the beginning we don't have the motives. By the time we get the motives, we don't have the energy. But the time to start is now, to do it the best you can, and to make sure that you keep a very happy relationship, because the body shows whether you are able to control yourself. The body shows you the discipline which is necessary to the happiness in other areas of your life. So working in team with the body as a partnership, you have a situation that cannot fail. But if one fails the other, the failure is spread over the entire environment sometimes. So work together with the body in a close partnership, and you will find improved health, greater happiness, and peace of mind. Well, thank you very much, folks. I guess that's all for today.